It is time for one of the most rewarding and probably also the most humbling sessions of our conference, resume and portfolio analysis. We brought in a panel of experts in data science hiring and recruiting to provide some feedback, good, bad, or otherwise, on selected resumes. We've asked them to share their honest opinions, and like last year, it's going to be tough, but really helpful and rewarding. So first, I'd like to thank so many of you for submitting resumes for review. Our team has selected 3 that we believe are representative of the diverse profiles that we have here today. But before we jump in, let me introduce our panel. First off is Wenting Sun. She's a lead data scientist at Ericsson. She has her PhD in visual sensing and servoing and leads a team at Ericsson to develop cutting-edge AI and ML applications in telecommunication domain, especially in 5G. She also drives the activities of Ericsson's active contribution in AI and ML open source platforms, Acumus. Joe Rohner is a chief technologist in Booz Allen Hamilton's digital and analytics strategy innovation group, focused on delivering data science, artificial intelligence, and analytics solutions. He holds a bachelor's degree in statistics and an MBA from San Diego State University, and he also holds a master's certification in business analytics from Indiana University in Bloomington. And thirdly is Wendy Kahn, who's a data scientist and developer advocate on Kaggle's data science and machine learning competitions team. She has a PhD in biomedical engineering from the University of Texas at Austin and a BS/MS in electrical engineering. Wendy, Wenting, and Joe, thank you for volunteering your time today. We're glad to have you.
Glad to be here.
I'm going to go ahead and ask you a couple questions as we kick things off. Wenting, we'll start with you here to start off. Could you share some about the data science teams you work on? What do you do in your current role day to day? And what type of data science or machine learning roles is your company currently hiring for or looking for?
Sure. So we're internally organized as a cross-functional team. So we have a few data scientists working with data engineers and software engineers, and we work on a comprehensive project together. And then in my team, we're looking for basically full stack data scientists and data engineers. And then if the candidates have specialties in a specific area with in-depth knowledge, of course, that'll be always preferable. So we work on diverse set of problems, and it's very challenging and interesting. The team dynamics is also very important for us in terms of how we look at the candidates.
That's great. That's really good. So thank you, Wenting. Joe, would you like to answer the same question for us, please?
Yeah. So first off, I love working at Booz Allen. I think we have a really differentiated data science path here because we're 105 years old with our roots in consulting. So we're a consultant and we're data scientists at the same time. So ultimately, we're going into client organizations rather than servicing our own. And it makes it interesting because our clients are on a journey. AI, deep learning, machine learning, everyone wants to do it right now. But they know the buzzwords, but they may not understand the journey to get there. So at Booz Allen, we're helping them on the journey, understanding their resources. And sometimes we know the art of the possible, but we've got to take a step back and get them there. We primarily work in the federal space. We also have a commercial practice and a cyber practice. I'm out on the West Coast. And right now I'm really focused on helping Department of Defense agencies become data-centric, making decisions with data. We're doing deep learning application to help them understand a multitude of their different data sets and whatnot. So we're full gambit from full-on strategy, day in, day out on how we're going to get there with governance to the full application of deep learning and neural nets and kind of seeing what we can figure out.
Great. Yeah, we mentioned in an earlier session, the joke seems to be in the business world of the buzzword chart, playing bingo. The free space still seems to be machine learning and artificial intelligence. So we're happy about that. And Wendy, from the Kaggle/Google side, why don't you give us your thoughts as well?
Sure. Hi, everybody. I'm Wendy. I'm a data scientist on the competitions team. Our day-to-day work involves working with customers on their data problems, define their problems. Everything that the competition participants don't do, we do. From forming the data problem to picking the metric, to how to improve data quality, how to ensure data is correctly formatted, how to prevent leakage, all the way to interacting with the community, making sure that they're solving the right problem with, acceptable methods. So yep, that's what I do.
Excellent. So I want to ask all of you one overarching question before we get into the nitty-gritty of the resumes. Wendy, we'll start back with you again, or we'll start with you this time. If you had to give a a best practice, or maybe even a worst practice that you typically see of a successful data science candidate's profile? What would you say?
For me personally, for generally when we were hiring data scientists at Kaggle, I like to see, for me, I like to see a strong profile at Kaggle. It doesn't have to be that they have won a ton of competitions, but just being exposed to very different types of data problems is a big plus for me. So that's the first thing that I look at. It's not necessary, but it's definitely a big plus to show that this person is curious about different problems. And just has a...
If I may just to clarify that, when you say different problems, do you mean problems across multiple industries or multiple data types or different technologies?
All of them, to show that either a pattern of somebody's competition or just Kaggle activity shows what kind of problems they're interested in. If they're very curious across the board or very focused on particular type of problem, they're both fine. I just wanted to see that they're curious and interested. So that's one of the first things that I look at. It's not a requirement, but it's a big plus.
No, that's great.
One of the things is for a resume, for sure. I like to see, also not a requirement. I think these days nothing is like you have to have this minimum. But I like to see this person having some, science, technology related background. Either it's education or MOOC or something. To see that this person is exposed to these type of things. Having a lot of Kaggle competition is great, but a lot of times I have come across with candidates where they actually know how to hack the problem, but don't know why they're doing it. So I think sometimes having that background or taking a class or something in theory helps you, or is a signal for me that this person would know why they're doing certain things. So these are the main things that I look at.
That's great. Joe, how about you want to share with us maybe what's one of the worst things that a candidate that you've seen across candidate profiles?
Yeah, so I guess a red flag to me when I look at a resume is if you start seeing all of the buzzwords on it and they just seem to be there without anything to back them up. There's no application. There's no way they applied it. They didn't do a Kaggle competition like Wendy said. If they make it past that and the buzzwords are there, we're going to figure it out in the first 5 minutes because we're going to go into depth and we're going to ask, to that point that Wendy made, why did you do this? There's too many data scientists or aspiring data scientists, maybe they don't deserve the title of data scientist, that just take open source as it is, plug some data in, get the answer, and that's the answer. Well, you got to know why you arrived at that answer, and did we need to fine tune it, and what were the parameters, and what were the risks, and there's a tendency to see a ton of buzzwords right now that are out there without anything to back it up, and it comes out in the interviews for sure.
That's great. All good answers. Hopefully not too many people cringing at home while they're watching. Wenting, actually, I'm going to start with you with our first specific resume. I'll hand over to you in just a moment, Wenting. For those of you who are watching along as well, in the link below, we do have a link to our Slack channel. A few of the members of our panel are going to be available to answer questions you may have, as well as some time at the end, we'll be answering some questions live. But we're going to take a look at 3 of the resumes. I know we've already seen some messages come in saying, was mine picked or not? These are 3 that we're looking at. We believe they represent a good portion of those who are attending. We're going to walk through a few questions each. And so this first resume is going to be on our screen. We'll cover some of the highlights here, if I can give a quick summary. It's a computer science student, electrical engineering and computer science undergraduate, about to graduate, intern at a large finance company, sort of building software and analytics dashboards. They have research experience analyzing medical data for a large research project, interned at several schools and research facilities, managing security, and has ranked in several programming and math competitions. So this is on the screen here. Wenting, I'm going to ask you first. We'll give you just a moment, and we'll also give our folks watching at home a moment to skim through this as well. But what first stands out as being very strong about this applicant?
Well, I think the project and the research experience looks like it's interesting, but I mean, this will definitely be the questions that we'll ask about during the actual interview.
Okay. Okay, I think that's very helpful. And also, if this person were applying for a role at Ericsson, what level would you put this person at? Would it be entry? Would it be junior data scientist, senior data scientist? What would you expect here?
Well, I think most likely it's going to be a junior because I don't see a lot of work experience for a candidate to be able to qualify for mid-level, even senior data scientist. The candidate has to have, breadth of different type of project experience. So I would like to say junior.
Okay, I think it's good. Zoe, let me ask you this one. What types of roles in data science or machine learning or artificial intelligence do you think this person would be a good fit for given their current experience?
Well, it looks like this person, I mean, there's not much details on the exact project. So I think most likely a full stack junior data scientist to, start working on several projects and, get some experience before, we assign this person to specific areas.
Okay, I think that's great. Now, Wendy at Kaggle, I'm gonna let you be the bad person this time. What are some areas that you think could be improved upon? What are some areas that are weak? What are some areas that you might want to see removed or rephrased?
All right, so why do you do this to me? Actually, first thing I wanted to say that is very interesting. I actually didn't spend that much time digging into this one, but it stands out to me that this person did a bunch of internship and work experience before he or she started on this college. He or she is still doing the bachelor's degree, but like it started in 2016. But a lot of aerospace controls intern started in 2015. And there was a School of Medicine, Ophthalmology, Neuroscience intern of using MATLAB doing analysis was 2014. So I thought that was interesting. So I would dig into it during the interview to understand a little more about this person's journey. Maybe they are one of those that didn't have to finish a college degree and had a ton of work experience, but decided that they needed the degree after all. So that's the first thing that I noticed is kind of hidden. So I feel like if that is the case, for this person, it did not stand out from the resume. I had to, it stood out to me, but it's not very obvious. Then this person should make it stand out a little more that maybe they have a lot of experience before going to college, because you'll be put into the new grad or even pre-new grad intern category given this experience. The other thing is, for me, what is wrong? You asked me. What I wanted to do. I feel like I like the hackathons and competitions section. I feel like I haven't heard of a lot of them. And when I was looking at it, maybe this person has the links, but it was anonymized maybe. So I didn't see the links. I would like to click on the links and see what these competitions and hackathons were about and dig in a little more to have a better grasp of this person's technical ability. What I would think that this person seems pretty good at programming, I would put this person as a more on the software engineering side, but I really want to know the code quality of this person to see if I want to proceed.
So Wendy, if I may ask you a follow-up on that, when you say you want to get more information on their hackathon or their competition background, are there certain types of hackathons or competitions that people should maybe not include if they feel like they just have to add space?
Yeah, if it's something that you're very proud of, put it in there. If you have joined 200 Kaggle competitions, then maybe don't list all of them. I think it's good to have some diversity to show that you're capable of doing different things. Like, for example, if you have some NLP experience and the other thing is completely different, it's like a reinforcement learning competition. You want to put it in there to show that you have breadth of them. I think I like the mathematics Olympiads, even though this was probably in high school, it feels like, but I'm not sure. I think it's good to put in there, but I do sometimes see people put like your, you're 10 years after graduating college and your high school performance is still in there, then that's kind of like a little strange for me, at least.
Okay, I think that's definitely very helpful. Joe, I'm going to turn things over to you here. Would you agree with Winting's initial assessment that this is a junior role? Would you think it would be an entry role? And then sort of the next question there would be, what types of positions, if they're applying at Booz Allen Hamilton, or if you are perhaps facilitating a hire for one of your DoD clients, something like that, what type of role would you put this person in?
Yeah, so I definitely agree that this appears to be a junior hire just based on the work history and the fact that they're still getting their bachelor's degree. So that's where my mind goes immediately. The interesting thing for me on this resume, and this is to your question of kind of where would I place them, their work experience is great, but it's very diverse. And there's no right way to do a resume, but this resume to me almost needs like a objective statement in it. Cause I don't know if you want to be a software dev. I don't know if you want to help me build the pipes. Are you a data engineer? I don't see anything about algorithm development on this, but I see a whole bunch of all over the place on this resume. So I think an objective statement would help me as a hiring manager understand where I might put them. Based on what I see, I'm really seeing this more probably on the dev side, supporting our data science solutions on getting the pipes in place, the data management, the munging, the engineering. I don't really see the machine learning algorithm development here. I see the coursework and whatnot, but I don't necessarily see it in the work experience at this point.
Sure. Let me ask you a follow-up question on that. And just personally, I'd heard conflicting advice on the idea of an objective statement, where I've heard a lot of people who've been in charge of hiring saying, the objective is to get the job. Why are you putting an objective statement? It's wasting space on a resume. Would you elaborate a little bit more on when it might be appropriate to include something like an objective and when it may not?
Yeah, so I think first off, everyone's going to give conflicting advice. And I don't think an objective statement is a be-all on every single resume. I think on this resume, it would help me because of the diversity that's there. So that's why I might say, go ahead and do this. But I do agree, if you have a very defined work experience and you're trying to keep everything to one page, the objective statement is not the most important thing on the resume. But in this case, I think it could help this resume to help me better understand where this candidate is going.
Sure, and it's great. And this is a question I'll ask for all three of you, since you just mentioned it, Joe, and I saw this coming up from Raja Lakshmi Ramesh asked, is it necessary the resume be a single page? A pretty quick answer, but and you may have differing opinions. But,
so I guess I'll start. No, it doesn't have to be a single page, but if we're going to a second page, the content better be worth it. Like that's just the golden rule. Like if you have really good content, you can't get it in one page, go to two. I've had 17 pages resumes and they are gone in a second. So what you put in front of me better be worth the real estate, I guess.
Right. Winting and Wendy, would you agree with that, or would you have a different thought?
I don't think you need to have exactly one page, but I think it's very important to have the resume very organized and highlight the portion that is relevant to the role that you're applying to. So I kind of agree with Joe. Yeah, short and sweet.
Wendy, would you have anything else to add there?
Yeah, similar. It's nice to, it's nice that it's short and gives me more time to focus on other things. But I think it's totally reasonable if somebody has a lot of work experience for the resume to be long. So I don't think I have a set rule here.
Sure. And so let me kind of ask, as a little bit of a summary on this one, as we move over to our second one here. If this individual were applying for a junior role as junior data science, maybe an entry-level position, maybe a junior data analyst, something like that, what would you say to this person that would make their resume more attractive, or do you think it's good to get them to that first interview?
Well, I think a couple of projects, like details on what kind of accomplishment they have with those projects, will definitely stand out. And some specifics on how this approach is helping with the end objective of the project definitely will worth a second look from either the first screeners or the interviewers.
That's great. Wendy, what about you? What do you think?
Yeah, skip me for this one.
All right, Joe, I'll let you have your final thought.
So two things on this resume that I think could make it stronger. And I'm being constructive here, so I'm not as critical as it's going to come off. We're trying to be beneficial. I think the selected coursework could be replaced with the skills area, which I think we'll see on a future resume. The coursework is great, but sometimes it's so ambiguous, I don't really understand what the candidate did. So I would change that out. And the hackathon and competitions, absolutely love that. Love to see a passion, love to see people doing things outside of academics and whatnot. I will tell you, I got distracted by 12th to 43, within top 15, fifth. Like, tell me what you did and tell me why it was so great. If you got first place, tell me you got first place. But don't distract me with numbers, I guess.
Sure. And before we move on to the next one, there was a question that came in that is a little bit applicable here, and you've somewhat addressed it already. Maha asked, how can I make my resume more attractive? By loading with projects or by loading with training certificates? So Joe, I'll let you continue that question, the train of thought. Maybe the question of projects and training certificates, project, and even continuing with academics or skills. If you have to make that trade-off, which one do you think is more important to be seen?
I think you have to look at the portfolio of all of them together and where you have duplicity. So if you have the same an advancement of certificates, show the most advanced certificate in machine learning, not the beginning one. If your projects are similar, talk about your best NLP project. Don't talk about 4 of them. You're just trying to get to the interview. So you get to put a piece of paper in front of me. I just need to see one really good tidbit that's going to make me say yes. And then once you're in the room, we can hit on whatever you want.
Sure. Wenting or Wendy, either one of you have any additional thoughts on that? On the question of projects versus technical certificates or coursework or MOOCs or things like that that are added in there?
I think for me, it's whatever you put in there better tell a good story. So it's not specific to like, I need more projects or I need a certificate. It's when you put something on it, it tells me, like, it's conveying a message to me. So if you say that I have graduated 20 years ago, but I have taken this nano degree from Udacity these 2 years and I finished all these coursework, it tells me that you are an experienced engineer in the industry and you are willing to learn new things. That's very valuable. So I think it's the message you want to convey in each thing that you put in. So that's my best bet.
That's really good.
Yeah. So, sorry. The other thing. Sorry.
Well, yeah, go ahead, Wendy.
The other thing that I was looking at the resume again, and I dug out another thing that I like that it didn't stand out. So I guess to answer your previous question of how this person could better put the resume, is this automated portfolio management, blah, 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 with these tools, reducing time from 2 months to 1 hour. Like, that stands out to me. That is a very good point. And I would love this person to work on some things that I can already think of things. But it did not, like I've been looking at this resume for the past hour or so, did not stand out to me. So I think the tool there is not necessarily that important. It's the message. So I would really love this person to, I think you have a lot of stuff in here. It just needs to be reorganized and try different things out such that it clicks with me a little more.
That's great. Wenting, actually, I'm going to hold off on this one. I'm going to start with you for our next resume. For the sake of time, I'm going to make sure that we're able to move on. Yeah. So we're going to pull up our second resume here. Let's walk through our brief highlights for those who are seeing this for the very first time. This is a current PhD candidate in biomedicine. They've worked with a lot of graduate research, has data science experience at a startup, a lot of BI analytics as well, has done some teaching as a course instructor in data science, has a personal project in developing algorithms identify orca whale sounds, as well as a lot of leadership with organizations specifically focused on women in data science and technology. So Wenting, this time I'm going to let you be the bad person, and why don't you lead off with some of the things that could use improvement, and then we'll switch over to some of the things that really stand out.
Right. So I think this resume looks to me that it has a pretty decent uh, overview of this person's experience. I think the problem with this is there's no specific descriptions on the projects. So different from Wendy, I am very focused on the project experience because I think that tells you a lot about this person's work style, this person's discipline in terms of applying data science. So I like to see some specifics mentioned with short 16 paragraphs and then to explain what is accomplished and what specific techniques that is unique in this approach. A little bit on that. I think that is kind of missing this resume.
Okay. It's actually a question that was asked that I think applies here, and it goes back to a little bit about what you were saying earlier, Joe. Daniel Dantas asked, how technical should resume bullet points be? High-level, readable accomplishments to allow comprehension even for non-technical readers, or should it be a sort of a mountain of technical keywords and details leave the reader feeling like you probably have the technical knowledge they're seeking? So the question seems to have a little bit of a bias and towards what Joe, you mentioned. You don't want to just see buzzwords galore, but at the same time, should you be oversimplifying it if somebody may not be that technical reading it? Wenting, I'll ask that question to you first. I know Joe mentioned it a little bit as well. So what would you look for in terms of the level of detail and how technical someone's bullet point should be?
Right. So I think we really don't like people who are putting a bunch of the buzzwords there because if you put everything there, most likely you don't know anything very, very well. So, so what we like to do is to screen the resume and look at whether this person has a certain focus, and then have some substance in the projects, in the descriptions of the past data science experience they had. And we're looking at the breadth and depth. So the breadth is, we wanted to have a lot of knowledge in this domain, but we certainly wanted to have certain depth. And that can be really reflected by how the project is explained in the resume itself. As I mentioned many times, we do look specific details. And if you put on NLP and if you don't understand word embedding, then you're going to be in trouble when you are being interviewed.
Right. Right. That's really important. And I think we're seeing here, and Joe, you mentioned this earlier, there is a skill section with that technical ability. But also, like I said, I'll sort of turn this into a question. And Wenting, I'll continue with you for this one specifically. Listing out a list of skills. So I'm not a data scientist, but I come from more the business side. And if somebody were to put on their resume, I'm proficient in Microsoft Word, you would think, well, yes, we would hope that you would be proficient in Microsoft Word. Do you really need to include that? To what degree, when it comes to an industry that has a much broader array of technical requirements, would you want to see some things like, I'm good at data warehousing and feature engineering and data analysis? Or do you think that all those things are necessary to show the breadth of skill set? So
can I answer that?
Yeah, sorry, I was keeping it on you for a moment.
Yeah. Okay. So I remember there was a study that was analyzing, telling the truth or not, right? So in the end, I think the research came out to say that for people who are telling the truth, you were able to elaborate on the details, especially on some of those policing interrogations, right? But not necessarily applicable in this particular situation. But as I mentioned, details speaks a lot, not necessarily on the keyword, but how exactly you have applied certain technique is very important. And then the key metrics. So people who have done it normally will put in more details. So it's very important for the candidate to highlight those details if you can in a short, succinct way, as I mentioned many times.
That's great. Wendy, I'm gonna hand things over to you now to do things a little bit. I know you want to be the nice person on this one. And yesterday we had a session specifically on moving from PhD to more of a business type of role or to an industry role. This is a PhD candidate, and I want to get your thoughts as well as where would you put this person in terms of entry level, junior, and I guess as a side question that was asked by Esteban Escobar, is there a difference between entry level or junior? And also what else stands out to you on this resume that you've liked and maybe even that you don't like?
First of all, I really like this resume. It reads really easy, helps me dig into more information in this. It's just like reads very nicely. One of my first question was like, you're still currently in the PhD program. What are you gonna do with that? You're working at all these companies. Are you gonna finish it? But that's more of my style of interview. I try to chat with the candidate to make them a little more comfortable, so they can perform better. Anyway, so I wanted to know what this person's trying to do with their PhD degree. Feels like I'm assuming from this resume that this person might not be very interested in finishing it, because like they're trying to do all these other jobs and it's not necessarily related to pure biomedicine. Although I have a biomedical engineering degree, so it's like I feel like my study was very related to the engineering world. So that would be the first thing that I put out there of like, what are you trying to do here? I want to know. It's not like I want to know if you're good enough. I just generally want to know what they're trying. What they're trying to do. Is it I want to find any job in the industry, or I'm kind of still interested in finishing this degree and explore both worlds. That's fine with me too. Just wanted to know. I really can't give you a solid answer of what level this candidate is, because it feels to me that this candidate maybe has a lot of real world experience already. So I think it'll have to be judged by a more in-depth technical interview of like, a little more of the tests on the person's kind of ability in math, ability to actually, carry on a project from end to end and work independently, or do you need a lot of hand-holding? Do you need somebody to make decisions every step and then have you work on each module? I think that would be what I gauge with the level of this candidate. Really, I can't really have a conclusion just from reading a resume.
Well, let me ask you this, Wendy, and then Joe, I want to hand things over to you because I have another follow-up for you, Joe, with this. Is there something that this candidate could add to their resume to try to answer that question? Because as Dan mentioned yesterday, Dan Becker mentioned in a session yesterday, sometimes you could be receiving hundreds of emails and hundreds of applications, and you really, and you say it'd be great to interview them, but this resume could look like a lot of others. What could they add to their resume to show, yeah, I deserve to get to that interview next step?
I think that's a different question, right? You were asking me what level would I put this person at, right?
So let me clarify. So
yeah.
Let's say that the role is for a senior data scientist position. You're not really sure. You would like to bring them in to interview to get more information, but at this point, you're not even sure if they're going to make the interview. Let's say this candidate does have the skills. What would you want them to include on their resume to show you that they're worth bringing in for that senior
right.
data?
First of all, I think it feels like this person did a good job in putting things on the resume. So if I were hiring a senior data scientist, I would still give this person a call back. I think it's potential. It's not everything. Maybe there's some hidden thing in there, but I really think that it feels like this person did a good job. Although if the person has led a project independently, or like mentored other people, or proposed a project and carried it through from end to end, then they should mention it. But I don't see that here. Okay. I feel like this person might be able to achieve that. If you have it, then you should put it on there. But I have a feeling this person has not. Doesn't mean that he or she doesn't have the potential to do that. Just,
right.
This is what I see.
Great. Joe, I'm gonna hand it over to you. I know you've had a lot of thoughts, a lot of head nods that are agreeing with our other two panelists. Why don't you give us an overview of your thoughts to this resume?
So I think overall, agreeing with Wendy, it's strong. So this person definitely would get an interview. Probably it'd be considered for mid or a senior position within our organization. And to the point that Wendy was making, leadership is kind of hidden throughout this. Like, it's great at the bottom of the resume where I can see that they have an active leadership role in organizations outside of academics and with women in data science and PI ladies. It could be a rewording, like on the Open Data Initiative, they promoted and participated in high-level discussions. Well, did you really drive the conversation? I don't want you to oversell it, but there's maybe a way to provide some additional leadership there that might get me into that senior category. So I know I brought up the professional summary or objective statement. So what's interesting is I think it would have helped that resume. On this resume, I actually think that they could word it better or remove it altogether, because there's terms like, I use tools like, I like embracing new opportunities. Like, it's just not like hitting home for me, or it doesn't have the full conviction. And again, I'm just being critical of what I'm seeing. I like this resume. They would get an interview for sure.
Yeah, and I noticed in the same case there, saying I use tools like Python, SQL, and Tableau. Those are also mentioned in the skills section. So it might be a place to use some of that language there.
Yeah.
Any final thoughts from our panel on this one before we move to our third resume?
The only thing I want to add that I really, really liked about this resume was the bold text, which gave me quick bullets that caught my eye so that I could see it. It drew my eye to that very quickly so I could start to understand this candidate. So I liked the formatting of this resume.
Great. Wendy, it looked like you were about to jump in there as well.
Right. Yeah. So I think in general, this is a well-formatted resume with key information highlighted. I think this one can be done a little better in the sense that maybe if this is a data scientist role that this person is applying, highlight more on the data science aspect, because I can see various things happening here, have some data science experience, and also development of the dashboards, more like engineering kind of work. So highlight the data science part and then play a relatively less focus on the engineering part if you are applying for a data science position, so that the person who are hiring will have less difficulty in placing this person in a particular role.
Great. Wendy, anything else from you?
Nope, I'm good.
All right. Well, let's pull up the resume of our last victim. Volunteer of the day. I'm going to leave this up here. Well, I'm sorry. Let me go ahead and go through our brief highlights, and then before we jump into the specific one, I have a higher level question for all three of you. So for this third resume, they have a bachelor's, master's, and PhD in psychology, as well as a second master's in statistics. A lot of past experience in research and data analysis. Has some work experience in the industry, specifically auto insurance, and has done some algorithms in driver segmentation, and has a small data science consulting firm background. So I'm going to leave this up here for other people to review who are seeing this for the very first time. But all three of our resumes so far have had a lot of focus on their education. I want to ask all three of you a broader question on resumes that relates to education. A number of questions have come in related to this. Specifically, we know that a lot of our attendees may not have a formalized brick and mortar style education. Maybe they've used Kaggle, maybe they've used MOOCs, maybe they've used boot camps. How would each of you approach a resume with that type of background? And what would you be looking for? And then sort of a second question to that. What are some low-hanging fruit that people with no formal education, no academics, no internship or jobs in data science could try to achieve, let's say in the next 6 months? Let's say they're looking to land a job in later this year, but they don't have the pedigree of these PhDs or data science areas there. What are some of the short-term, easy things people could do in the next 6 months that could really improve the quality of their resume? Especially with the international audience, we want to sort of think outside of the Silicon Valley box, if you will, for a moment. Wendy, since the indicator is on you for now for our meeting here, why don't you address that very, very large, convoluted question that I posed for you?
I know. I was like, I forget what you were asking already at the end of the question. I think you're trying to say what is a low-hanging fruit for people who have a lot of years of education versus for people who don't have years of education.
Yeah, or allow me to
what should I do? Is that right?
Question into two areas. One is, what would you say to people who haven't attended a traditional brick and mortar school and are using things like Kaggle Learn or MOOCs or boot camps? How would they structure their resume? And then secondly, for those same individuals, especially those that don't have access to a lot of these great educational tools, what's something that they could do in the next 6 months that would add to their resume and make it more attractive?
Yeah, it is a very loaded question. I feel like I'm dodging these questions a lot today, so I'll try to be as clear as possible, although it usually offends people if I'm very clear. First, I don't think there's like a clear path. We shouldn't group people just based on the level of educations that they have done. I think everybody's very different. Like for a PhD that, like this person has a psychology PhD, like 3 levels of education in psychology and a master's in statistics versus somebody who has done, I don't know, CS bachelor's all the way to PhD, probably would have very different stories to tell. So in that way, I don't think we should group people this way. I think you really have to think about where's your past and where do you want to go, and tell a story there. For example, if you have, let's say you don't have a lot of traditional education in your pocket, but you have years of experience in, let's say, a big insurance company doing some analysis, but not like fancy machine learning, and now you want to get into more data science, then think about your experience in the insurance company and think about how it'll be really helpful for, I don't know, a very modern types of insurance company, and you could use machine learning, but because you have all these years of familiarity with the industry, you can really shine there because you know the data, you know the problem, you know where the pain points are for these companies. So it's hard for me to group people by this way. I feel like I'm repeating myself, so I'm gonna stop.
Wendy, I'll hand it over to you. Again, I know it's a loaded question, but overall, for the last resumes have had PhDs, great pedigrees. A lot of our community, though, is self-taught, or they're teaching themselves data science in addition to their work experience.
Right.
How would you analyze that, and what are some things that those individuals could do in the short term to help boost their profile?
Sure. I think education does play a part in terms of getting you the right job, especially in data science domain, but it's not all. I mean, we have seen candidates who graduated from top universities who don't necessarily do well in our interviews, and we have seen candidates who do not necessarily have this kind of education, but did extremely well. So I think the key here, as I mentioned, is what you chose to do with your time, with your life, with your experience. So if you have shown track record of even no official kind of PhD or education in this domain, but you have spent a lot of time working on a breadth of different projects with in-depth knowledge, then I mean we don't close door for this kind of candidates, and sometimes we happen to have very good candidates in those kind of people with those kind of experience. So I think as I mentioned, projects, what you have done and how much have you applied, whether it's from formal training programs or from formal education or from self-learning, it doesn't really matter. When it comes down to solving a problem, if you have the passion, if you have the right experience, if you have the right knowledge, we don't give set barriers for people who don't have a PhD or any kind of formal education in this area.
Yeah, I know a lot of the members of our community. I'm seeing a whole slew of questions come in. A lot of them are on exactly this. I don't have a PhD. You don't have these formalized education. I know there's some good encouragement there. Joe, I'll let you answer it as well. I know coming from the consulting background, what are your thoughts?
So a formal education is a good data point, but to Wenting's point, it's not the end all be all. I rarely look at the university, and I more look at what the degree is in, but my experience has taught me. I had a business leader in artificial intelligence who had their master's in forestry, but everything is data these days. So to the point that I think the other panelists have made, it's really about how are you going to talk about it? Where's the application? listing those projects, listing those Kaggle competitions that you're doing, or online courses through Coursera, Udacity, Cloudera, whatever it may be, or through Kaggle. I'll put a shameless plug in here about what you could do in the next 6 months. So one of the cool roles that I have at Booz Allen in partnership with Kaggle is I am the PM for the Data Science Bowl. And we will get some communications out soon, but the Data Science Bowl will be returning towards the end of this calendar year. So it will be an opportunity for a worldwide event that is one of the largest, if not the largest, I don't want to make that claim, on the Kaggle platform, to kind of really get out there and kind of show something that matters. So that's something you could do.
Right. A quick note across the board there for all three of you, and then we'll jump into this resume as we wrap things up. Do you find it useful on a resume for someone to include a Kaggle profile or a GitHub profile, or do you think it's more so just to better list out the actual projects themselves?
Absolutely. I think that's definitely a point that we like to look into even before we bring the candidates in. We want to go in and look at the candidates' code style. If they have the GitHub link and they have Kaggle competition experience, we want to see how well did they do in the past. Definitely list them out if you have them.
Great. I see some head nods around, so I'm going to assume that's a similar answer.
The only thing let me add to that though is I have had people put their GitHub pages up there, and my team, because we do team interviews, will go to it and everything is forked, or if we ask them about a line of code, they can't answer it. So you better make sure it's your content and you understand what you're telling us you did, because it can be a double-edged sword.
That's good advice. That question came in from Trang Nguyen, by the way, so appreciate that question, Trang. All right, so let's jump in here. We just have a few minutes left, and I want to make sure we have a chance to address our third resume. And then I'll also give a chance for you to make some more shameless plugs at the end for all three of you. Joe, we'll keep it on you. Would you mind giving us sort of just in your initial thoughts? What's your gut check reaction on this resume? What do you like and what do you don't like?
So when I look at this, and I'm looking at it from an industry perspective, I'm looking at it from consulting. I read this and my first inclination is that this person wants to work in academics, or it's just extremely academic, and that's where their experience is at this point. I don't see an industry perspective. It's hard for me to look at this resume and think about how would they do in a business environment. But that said, there's some really good content if you get into the sub bullets and you can get past that. And, because we're on the panel here, I had to really analyze this. As a hiring manager, I don't think I would have spent the time. But I see 200 plus presenting findings to 200 plus people. That's amazing. There's great analytic techniques in this, but it's somewhat hidden. And I'm wondering if this person has an academic mindset based on the titles, based on the education, right, and they're writing it for an academic audience. And maybe that's the job they're looking for. If so, this resume is written great. But for what I'm looking for, it doesn't necessarily pique my interest. I don't know that this one would make it to interview.
Wendy, from the Kaggle side, how would you analyze this?
I completely agree with you, Joe. That was my first intuition of I don't see a lot in this resume, but then I dug in more. I had the same impression as you for like the first 10 seconds, and then I dug in more. I was like, auto insurance company, 6 terabytes of distributed data with SQL. How do you do that? And it started to click with me. That this person has some aspiration to move more into data science. So I definitely agree with you, Joe, that it's not telling the story well. I see this person's wanting to do something, but it's not presented that way. If I could suggest, I would put the professional skills up from the third section to the first, and then rewrite the experience and try to have it focused more on relevant experience, like different bullet points. Have some friends look at it for you, but just rewrite it such that the experience feel more relevant to where you want to be, and then move the education to the third section.
Okay, great. And also, I'll mention this for all those who are watching. I'm seeing a lot of questions that are coming in on things like formatting, structure, organization. All great questions. I'm gonna leave those for the Slack channel after this for those to kind of pepper in their own thoughts as well. I'm glad that you mentioned it. I'm just saying that I want to make sure people know that we are going to address some of those offline as well. Wenting, why don't you give us some of your thoughts on this resume?
Right. So I think I'm on a unfair position here. I'm the last to look at this or talk about this, so I have a little more time than the other two panelists. So I'm able to look into the details. I think this person really have some impressive experience because this person is able to detail the approach that he was or she was using for the problem, like hierarchical linear modeling. That means that he or she knows the details, and then certain highlights, it's kind of caught my eyes. But I agree with the other two panelists. The content could be organized better because it's not really important of what kind of position you have had in the past. It's really important what you have achieved or accomplished, in the past design experience. So somehow this gives me a chronicle way of displaying what role you've been in, but it didn't highlight really, the project that has those great content in. So I like to see that be reorganized a little bit. But if I look into the details, I think there are a lot of things that can be played strongly to the favor of the candidates if it's organized better.
Yeah, I think that's something that all three of you seem to point out is even though this individual has close to 10 years of education in a variety of fields, one of their strengths seems to be buried in the fact that a lot of their experience they have in industry or in other areas are somewhat hidden, and so sometimes it's just making it a little bit more visible there. So we have a couple of questions here towards the end, but before then, any final thoughts from our panelists on this third resume? All right. Well, hearing none, I want to give. I see a bunch of questions that we're having that are coming in. A lot of it being related to the question earlier around folks who they have experience, but it's not data science relevant. Some ordering and prioritization questions, and I think those are best suited for Slack. But so I'll go ahead and just close with this one. Overall, well, I want to hand over to each of the three of you. Any final remarks or advice you'd want to share on the resume process? In addition to that, please do let us know if there are any open positions at your respective companies that you can hire for. For those who are streaming, again, some of the panelists will be in Slack afterwards answering some questions. So keep them coming, and we'll do our best to address as many as possible. So, Joe, since the flag is on you, I'll go ahead and let you close things out from your perspective.
So, I know today we provided you a lot of insights and thoughts on how we look at resumes. Let me tell you, there's no perfect way to write a resume. When you're writing a resume, take a look and make sure that it reflects who you want us to know who you are. I don't know, there's a stat out there and I won't have it right, but I think a hiring manager looks at a resume for under 20 seconds. It might even be like 8 or 10 seconds. So you get my attention for 8 or 10 seconds on a piece of paper. And so you better make sure that you're telling the story that is true to you and that you've thought through the organization and that you've taken the time. By doing that, and when your resume reflects that, it lets me know that you're serious about working at my company and being part of my team. Yes, we are hiring. I lead our West Coast business up and down the coast. I have East Coast colleagues. We're hiring across the United States. We have a multitude of positions. I think we have something on Kaggle right now associated with this event, but boozallen.com, you will find probably somewhere between 40 and 50 open jobs at this point, all with applied machine learning, deep learning, data science. If you're looking for a career, I've been here 14 years. It's a great place to be.
Great. And just for those who I'm sure, I don't have Slack open in front of me right now, but I'm sure many people are typing in, thanks, where can I send my resume? Check out boozallen.com or the Kaggle posting. We'd love to have you there. Wenting, let me hand things over to you. And any final thoughts again that conclude us out on final remarks you want to share?
Sure.
Hiring it all.
Sure. I just final note for any candidates who are putting up their resumes, make sure that you know what you're putting up there, because if you don't know what you're putting on there, you're going to be, questioned during the interviews, and it's going to be, it's going to be tough. So, and then we're also hiring. Ericsson is hiring aggressively across America, North America. We have Santa Clara, we have San Francisco, and Montreal, Canada. All the three sites are hiring. Right now, we have about 30 to 40 open racks right now. So I'm gonna post up the links of the current open positions later on in Slack. So do feel free to apply to those positions. and good luck.
Great. Thank you, Wenting. Wendy, any final closing thoughts for all of us?
Yeah, I just want to say, like, for the 3 people that your resume got selected, I think I applaud you. I think you did the right thing to put your resume out and receive feedback. I think this is what everybody should do. When you're looking for a job, you shamelessly ask people, like, do you have a few seconds to look at my resume and give me some feedback? Because you might learn very valuable things from. It's not even necessary. They don't have to be like industry leaders. It could just be like anybody that could hire anyone, or your coworker or something. Maybe not your current coworker, but it's a stressful time to be looking. Like when you're looking for a job, it's very stressful. So it's stressful for everyone. If you put your resume out there, you don't know if it's good enough, and it's an ongoing effort that you might have to revise your resume every other day or something, but that's okay. It's a common thing. Everybody does this, and I'm stressed when I have to, review my resume all the time, and then feeling like, oh God, like the last version was so bad. But it happens. So you're not the only one that feel like you're struggling. It's all of us.
All right, that's great. Well, great advice from all of our panelists. Once again, let me thank all 3 of you, Wendy, Wenting, and Joe. We really appreciate the time that you have. And I know, as I mentioned, a few of them will still be in the Slack channel. We are going to take a break for lunch. We'll be coming back at 1 o'clock Pacific time. We're going to be having a session on building your online brand, even if you're not really someone who's used to self-promotion. So we're really excited about that coming back this afternoon. For all that then said, here we're signing off for the hour. Thanks again to our panelists, and we'll see you guys back in just a little bit.
Thank you. Bye.
Bye.